I once tried to change my entire college major just to get out of a single public speaking class. That's how terrified I was. Just thinking about it made my heart pound, this frantic, panicked drumbeat inside my chest. But a few years later, I gave a speech that ended up in a standing ovation. A real one. The one thing that made this change possible was a strange, almost ridiculous lesson I learned from professional wrestling. Sounds crazy, right? Stick with me, and I'll explain the one tool that took me from pure panic to a packed auditorium. It all started with a required class my sophomore year of college, Communications 101. A total gen ed for an easy A for most students, but for me, it felt like a death sentence. The syllabus listed 4 major speeches, and each one looked like a mountain that I could not climb. The very first day, the professor made us go around the room and introduce ourselves. My turn came, and the simple sentence I practiced, "Hi, I'm Adam. I'm an education major, originally from California," came out as a small squeak. My palms started sweating, my vision went fuzzy, and I could feel my face getting hot. In fact, I was pretty sure I was catching on fire. This wasn't just nerves. It was a full body meltdown. It felt like every cell was screaming at me to run. I didn't sleep that night. I was just obsessed over the first speech, a simple 3-minute introduction. My mind was a highlight reel of everything that could go wrong. I'd forget my words. I'd pass out. I'd pee my pants. The whole class would laugh at me, and that feeling was so completely overwhelming that the next morning I walked right into my academic advisor's office. I sat across this kind woman who had no idea that I was imploding, and I told her I wanted to change my major. She looked confused. My grades were fine. I was on track. "Why the sudden change, Adam?" she asked. I just couldn't say it. I couldn't admit it. Yes, ma'am. I want to change my major because I'm so scared of talking to 30 people that I'd rather blow up my entire career plan than do it. Instead, I mumbled something about new interests or something like that, but she saw right through it, of course. But she was kind, and she told me to think on it for a day. My mind was already made up. I was ready to burn my entire future down just to get out of that classroom. And that decision to run away would have ended up costing me more than I could have ever imagined. That imposter feeling didn't stay in that classroom. It started bleeding into every part of my life. Even after I wiggled my way into a different course to avoid the speech, its ghost followed me. In group projects, I'd do all the research. I'd build the slide deck, but when it was time to present, I'd be the guy volunteering to just click the slides while someone else talked. It followed me to my first job. I'd be in a team meeting with a great idea, a solution to whatever problem we were stuck on, but the words would just get caught in my throat. And the same physical reaction would kick in. My heart would start racing. My breathing would get super shallow, and the absolute certainty that if I opened my mouth, everyone would see that I didn't belong. They'd see me as the fraud that I was so sure that I was. And this constant fear of being exposed, even when I knew I was competent, is what experts call imposter syndrome. And man, let me tell you from experience, it's exhausting. The fear wasn't just holding me back, it was making my world smaller. I was living in a quiet little prison of my own making, watching big opportunities fly by because I was too scared to just raise my hand. The voice in my head was relentless, telling me I wasn't smart enough, I was not articulate enough, that I didn't deserve my seat at the table. I thought I'd be trapped in that quiet prison forever. I never would have guessed that the key to my escape was hiding in plain sight on Monday night television in the most ridiculous place imaginable. Well, a few years went by like this, with me stuck in that same loop. And then came the weird part. One night I was flipping through some channels and I landed on professional wrestling. Now I love professional wrestling, but I hadn't watched it really since I was a kid, but for some reason I left it on. And I started seeing it in a whole new way. I wasn't really watching the matches, I was watching the characters. There was one wrestler in particular. In interviews, the guy behind the character was soft-spoken, almost shy. But the second his music hit and he stepped through those curtains, he transformed. He became this larger-than-life hero. His posture changed. His voice boomed with electric confidence. He wasn't the shy guy from the interview anymore. No, he was someone else entirely. And that's when it clicked. He was using an alter ego, a persona. It was a psychological tool that let him ditch his insecurities and step right into that role. A role that he was focusing on. Well, the character gave him a blueprint for confidence. And it turns out, famous performers do this all the time. Beyoncé famously created her onstage alter ego, Sasha Fierce, to conquer her own stage fright. She became someone else to let her real talent out. I realized my problem. My problem wasn't that I lacked confidence. My problem was that Adam lacked confidence. But what if I didn't have to be Adam when I stood up to speak? But a concept is one thing, right? Putting it into practice is absolutely another. How do you actually build a second personality from scratch without feeling like a crazy person? Well, it turned out to be a very specific and very strange process. The idea took root and I ran with it. I decided to build my own alter ego, and it felt silly at first, I won't lie. I felt like a kid that was playing make-believe, but I was desperate. I needed a name for this guy, a name that sounded confident, capable, cool under pressure, and I remembered my dad used to call me Ace, and when he did, it always made me feel good, and I lost my dad when I was 15, so that name really worked for me. You see, Ace wasn't a superhero. He was just a version of me without all the baggage. So I started mapping him out. Ace spoke slowly and deliberately. He stood up straight, his shoulders back, and he genuinely believed that what he had to say was valuable and that people, every person, wanted to hear it. He saw public speaking not as terrifying, not as judgment, but as a chance to share something useful. Then I started practicing, not just the speech, but practicing being Ace. I'd walk around my apartment as Ace. I'd go to Starbucks and order my latte as Ace. When the old negative thoughts started creeping in, you're gonna bomb, you're gonna sound like an idiot, people are gonna see right through you, they're gonna laugh, I would constantly push back from Ace's perspective because Ace would reply, hey, I'm prepared and I have something valuable to share. It's a technique called cognitive reframing, where you just replace the garbage script that's going through your head with a better one. The alter ego was the tool that let me do this. It gave me the space that I needed to get out of my own way. But I was building this character in private, and it was all just theory. I had no idea if it would actually work in a high-stakes, real-world situation, and then the ultimate test landed right on my desk. See, this whole process of building a new persona, of rewriting stories we tell ourselves is an incredibly powerful tool that goes way beyond public speaking. right? If you've ever felt that nagging voice of self-doubt, I've put together a simple worksheet on these ideas to help you define your own ACE. And it's a guide that will help you build a more confident persona for those moments you need it the most. All you have to do is look in the description, find my email, and I will send you a copy of that worksheet for absolutely free, and I promise it will change your life. My chance to really test this out came a few months later. A project I'd been working on at school, and I needed it to be a huge success. You see, in order to graduate, I had to do this speech. And I drew my topic, and I drew the topic of farm fresh eggs, a 3-minute speech. Now, old Adam would have faked an illness, would have dropped the class, but this was different. I had to take this course in order to graduate, so I said yes. Well, the morning of that presentation, that old familiar panic started to bubble up. My heart was racing. I got cold hands, the works, but instead of letting it swallow me, I had a plan. I went to the men's room. I stood in front of the mirror. I took a few deep breaths and I looked at myself in the eye and I said, "Okay, Adam, you did the work. It's time for Ace to deliver it." I squared up my shoulders, I put my feet flat on the floor, and I walked out, walking into that classroom. And when my name was called, I walked up to the front, which was the stage, and I really wasn't me anymore. I was Ace. I could feel the nerves, but it wasn't panic, it was just energy. And Ace knew how to use that energy. And I got up to the podium, I looked out at the sea of faces, and I just paused, letting the moment settle. I found friendly faces in the audience, not judgmental ones, just like I'd practiced. And then I started, and the words just came out smoothly, clearly. The voice I heard wasn't shaky Adam, it was calm, measured. It was the tone of Ace. I didn't just read the slides, I told the story of the project, something I knew inside out. I could feel a connection with the audience. I saw them nodding and leaning in. And when I delivered the final line, there was a beat of silence, and I thought, here comes the judgment. But instead of judgment, there was applause. Not polite clapping, like real enthusiastic applause over farm fresh eggs. And the one person actually in the front row stood up, and then another, and within seconds the entire room was on their feet. A standing ovation. It would be a great story now if I could tell you that I was magically cured right then and there, and that I never felt that fear again, but it's not what happened. The real lesson, the one that actually stuck, came the days and weeks after the applause died down. Now, I'd love to tell you that I was magically cured of my fear forever, but that's not how it works. That's not the truth. And the truth is, imposter syndrome doesn't just pack up and leave. Even now, there are days I feel like a fraud, like that kid in the advisor's office, ready to run, ready for people to see right through me, ready for people to judge me. But here's what changed. That standing ovation, it became my proof. It was this undeniable memory that I could pull out whenever the doubt started creeping back in. The Ace alter ego was like that set of training wheels. It helped me learn what confidence felt like, and I built up that muscle memory, and over time, I started needing him less and less. The qualities I gave to Ace, the calm voice, the straight posture, the belief in my own value, started to feel like my own. The two identities started to merge. And the biggest lesson for me was that you don't have to kill the imposter feeling to succeed. In fact, that feeling sometimes means you're growing. It means you're stepping into a bigger arena. The fear isn't a stop sign. It's a signal that you're probably on the right track. The goal isn't to silence the fear, but to learn how to perform anyway. Someone once said the difference between an experienced speaker and an inexperienced speaker is that experienced speaker teaches their butterflies to fly in formation. So I guess we all have butterflies. And when I think back to that kid who was ready to throw away his future over one speech, I just feel for him. He felt trapped because he didn't have the right tools. The difference between him and the guy that got a standing ovation wasn't some huge personality transplant. It was finding one powerful tool. The choice to step into a role that let my own abilities come out to play. You don't have to let the fear of being found out write your story. Your confidence is already in there. Sometimes it just needs a different character to let it speak. You don't have to become a different person, but you can give yourself permission to act like the version of you who's already worthy, who's already capable, and already knows exactly what to do. Now, I don't think I'm alone. And if this story hit home for you, I would love to hear about your own journey with public speaking or imposter syndrome in the comments below. Sharing our story is one of the best ways to see that we are not alone in this. And I promise, I read every single comment and I reply to every single comment. And if you want more content about turning your fears into your greatest strengths, please consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.